I was saying, y'all, it's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and now that my voice is like mostly back, I think it's time to go ahead and do this review video for the Commanders versus Saints victory that we just took place, man. For we got to talk about whether the refs are drunk or not. We also, of course, got to talk about why we traded for Marshon Lattimore. He showed you why we traded for Marshon Lattimore. We're going to dive into those stats. Of course, we're going to break down every single position group, starting with quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, all of that through the defense, defensive line, linebackers, corners, safety, special teams as well. And then we have a lot of very interesting thoughts after that as well. So make sure you stay tuned throughout the entire video, because I promise you, you're gonna learn something before you leave this video. That's a promise. But before we dive into everything, make sure you still farm that like button, still farm the subscription button, and still farm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Of course, I'm hitting y'all with daily videos. I'm working on a stats video for the Commanders Kings YouTube channel. I have so many different video ideas that I just can't wait to get it out to y'all, to the point that I may need to be doing like 2 videos a day leading up to this upcoming Eagles game. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. And I want to get to some of these film sessions that will be exclusive to channel members only. But instead of wasting more of your time, let's go ahead and dive into this video right now. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so I feel like we need to start with the injuries first. I feel like we definitely got to start there. And even before the game started, Zane Gonzalez was out due to his injury. I think it's like a left ankle or something like that. Fidarian Mathis, healthy scratch. Michael Davis, healthy scratch. Jeff Driscoll, your reserve third quarterback, healthy scratch. KJ Osborne, healthy scratch as well. Like I already told y'all before the game even started, I told y'all days ago that he more than likely will not play against the Saints, because when we signed Noah Brown, he did not play against the Saints. Then you had linebacker Dominique Hampton, another healthy scratch. But the biggest injury scratch was Tyler Biadasz, who out of nowhere dealing with the illness. Friday's practice, he was good to go, heard nothing of it. Suddenly, Sunday, right before the game, illness coming up, and everybody's talking to him. Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, so many different parts of our coaching staff all walked up to him. You saw it even before the game happened, checking up on him and things like that. And then it was so bad that he wasn't able to go. I don't know if this illness came out of nowhere Saturday or if it literally popped up Sunday morning. But either way, us not having our starting center was big time. Now moving on, and we're going to get to that, especially when we get to the offensive line part of this video. But even Brian Robinson at a certain point had like a collision in the end zone and got up slowly, and then we weren't seeing us run the ball with him for a while. And I don't know if that was just Cliff Kingsbury just being negligent towards the run game, or if that was because Brian Robinson was banged up. But then even if Brian Robinson were banged up, you could have just ran the ball with Chris Rodriguez and those guys. But either way, that happened. Then you had Zach Ertz made that amazing one-handed catch, but then ended up getting hurt on that play with a concussion. And now we're not even entirely sure if he'll be able to play against the Eagles this upcoming Sunday. An amazing catch, and it sucks that it was ruined by the result of the play, the ending of the play, because that was a fantastic one-handed catch for a first down when we really needed it. And then again, it was confirmed that it was a concussion, and then he ended up missing the rest of the game immediately after that. That was his final play of the game. And then with Zach Ertz being hurt and out for the rest of the game, we were to the point where our second, third, and fourth leading receivers were out in that game. That is crazy. With Noah Brown and Austin Eckler already out as your third and fourth, then Zach Ertz was your second. Terry McLaurin was our only top 4 receiver on this team, statistically, targets, catching, receiving yards, and all of that type of stuff that was even available in that game. As soon as Zach Ertz got hurt, it was just Terry McLaurin and friends technically. So I feel like this offense between Cliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels, and all of these guys deserve at least a little bit of credit for that, because most teams lose their second, third, and fourth top receivers, receiving targets. Their offense completely shatters and falls apart. Ours did not do that to that level. I mean, we were still pretty effective. We didn't score as many points as we should have. We left a lot of plays on the field, but I don't feel like that offense looked like an offense that was missing 3 of their top 4 receivers. And just to let you know how bad it really is, Zach Ertz, Noah Brown, and Austin Eckler accounted for 46% of the team's targets this season. we had to go out there without basically nearly 50% of our offense, which is just crazy. So without the second, third, and fourth leading receivers, Jaden and Terry McLaurin was still cooking for a lot of that game, especially in the first half. And then also halfway through the fourth quarter, Derek Forrest had that play where he knocked out both Jeremy Chin and Saints receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Literally took Jeremy Chin out of the game. I guess we'll find out Wednesday after we finally practice again how severe the Jeremy Chin injury is, probably with a concussion or something like that. Who knows? But Derek Forrest literally took Jeremy Chin out of the game, and then in place had to step in for him, and he did not look good those like last 7 minutes that we didn't have Jeremy Chin out there. So thanks a lot there, Derek Forrest. I like Derek Forrest and everything, but boy, that was a bad moment right there. You can't necessarily blame him, but that really sucked. And then, of course, Jeremy Chin was confirmed to be evaluated for a concussion. He never returned to the game, so maybe it's not looking too good for us. Now we'll probably have Zach Ertz and Jeremy Chin potentially missing this upcoming Eagles game, so keep your eyes on that. Of course, I will keep y'all updated on the injury situation throughout the entire week on a daily basis once we get information after we practice from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday's practices. Now moving on. Hey, man, the refs were terrible. On the Saints side, they were complaining about a lot of things, but I know on our side, the Commander side, terrible ref day. First of all, Phantom roughing the passer calls were just insane, bro. And then the non-pass interference call went on one of those, the final Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin deep shot where Jaden Daniels underthrew it a little bit, and then the corner was already whipping up on Terry, giving them hands, giving them the business before the ball even got there. They didn't even call that. But of course, the most important play that everybody's talking about, even the Pat McAfee show, everybody's talking about how the clock stopped after that catch to Moreau that put the Saints down at the 1 yard line. The clock stopped for at least 3 seconds, and you could argue that they should not even had enough time to get off that final play to score the touchdown to even potentially go for the game-winning 2-point conversion. I mean, I just still don't understand how that happened. You even had Warren Sharp questioning it. At Sharp Football, neutral national analyst, said the ref stopped the game clock for 4 seconds when it should have been running, freezes at 9 seconds. The play clock ticks from 39 to 35. Game should have been over. How can they make a mistake like this? And shouts out to Mark Tyler of Hogshaven, because I agree. He said it's poor to blame the refs for the results of the games and things like that. I really try to stay away from it. However, the NFL and NFL officiating needs to step up and investigate Sean Hachuli and his crew for the egregious calls and clock mistake at the end of the game from the Saints Commanders game yesterday. Absolutely unacceptable. I completely agree. Again, I really try to stay away from blaming refs, but that one was really bad. If we would have ended up losing that game, we deserve some of the blame, of course, for that game even being within striking distance for the Saints. But I mean, at the end of the day, the refs literally were trying to give them that game. It felt like Vegas called that in, man. And then JP Finley and the whole media team even asked Dan Quinn after the game about like the whole late clock stoppage and things like that. Dan Quinn literally said he's just going to take the high road, which pretty much says a lot. Him not saying anything says a lot, because you could tell that he was very upset about that situation even after the victory. Then Jaden Daniels spoke on it. I love his mentality. He said, quote, "If we go down there and we score on offense before the defense is even on the field, we're not in that situation." I completely agree with that. That's the exact mentality that I have. Matter of fact, shouts out my boy Josh Taylor. Make sure you follow him on Twitter and YouTube as well. Subscribe to him on YouTube. He said, my honest thought, who cares? How do you even let that game get that close? I completely agree. That's the exact mentality that I have, but still, that doesn't stop me from questioning whether the refs were drunk or not going into that game. Now, let's start with Cliff Kingsbury and the offense before we get to Jaden Daniels. First of all, that first touchdown drive was the longest drive ever. I mean, even the fact that we tried to kick the field goal and then apparently like they ran into the kicker or ran into the center. So they did something wrong on special teams, which kept our drive alive. We ended up scoring a touchdown, but that did not stop us. I refuse to sweep all of the stuff under the rug that prevented us from scoring a touchdown in the first place. I mean, you had holding penalties, you had illegal shifts where Olamide Zaccheaus moved too early, and it was a nice play design, nice play call. It was well executed from everybody except for Olamide moving too early. And then you had bad snaps from Michael Michael Dieter on that drive as well. And that was already like a foreshadowing, like a look into the future of how terrible of a game Michael Dieter was about to have. He showed us that he was truly a backup center. We're going to get to that when we get to the offensive line part, because boy. But also, Washington has scored the points in the first quarter in 13 straight games, including that Saints game yesterday. That's the longest active streak in the NFL. We have the longest active scoring points in the first quarter streak in the NFL with 13 in a row now. And then the touchdown that happened, that Terry McLaurin catch after that Jaden Daniels magic was insane. Absolutely crazy, man. I mean, it was play action, first of all, because we had the touchdown to Olamide Zaccheaus. So Cliff Kingsbury, using his intelligence, thinking ahead, he was like, all right, we're going to motion Olamide Zaccheaus again the same way, but instead of actually giving him the ball this time, we're going to use him as a distraction. The defense leaned that way. Jaden Daniels made some things shake with his legs and then was able to deliver a complete dot to Terry. And then Terry McLaurin deserves all of the credit in the world for how he was able to come down with that catch. That was absolutely insane. That was the second touchdown. The first touchdown, my fault, was really crazy, but the second one was insane as well. I kind of got them mixed up in my head right there. But either way, in the first half, we had two amazing Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin receptions. And then by halftime, we were up 14-0. But at the same time, no, 25 dropbacks with 12 rushes. Not good when you're going against the 25th ranked run defense and the Saints. And they ended up looking like one of the best run defenses against us. But I mean, we just refused to run the ball in the first half. And then by the time he wanted to run the ball in the second half, it wasn't working. And then also by halftime, we already had allowed 5 sacks, and we only had 50 yards total of rushing, including Jaden Daniels. And then we had a lot of penalties as well. So we were kind of lucky to be up 14-0, to be completely honest. The defense was dominant in the first half. By the second half, they weren't as dominant. Once they switched from Jake Haener to Spencer Rattler, things completely changed. I don't understand why the Saints didn't start Spencer Rattler immediately, first snap, first quarter, first drive, and all of that type of stuff, but who knows? Either way, came out of halftime, and then we were right back to trying to run the ball with Brian Robinson, which we just kind of avoided running the ball with him in the first half. But the second half, we tried it, but anywhere between the 20-20, it wasn't really working well. Like, I mean, it was working in the red zone, but that 20-yard line to the next 20-yard line, that majority of the middle of the field, it was not working, man. But then Cliff Kingsbury, smart, decided, okay, we can't run the ball with Brian Robinson. How about we throw him the ball? Then he had a nice 20-yard catch and run there. I mean, our screen game was working really well against the Saints. Like, Olamide Zaccheaus was killing in the screen game. De'Ami Brown. Brian Robinson caught a couple of passes underneath and made some nice chunk plays. The screen game was working against the Saints. I feel like we probably should have done that a little bit more. And then we had, from 3rd and goal on the 1-yard line, decided not to run the ball with B-Rob. Just decided not to do that. So we ended up kicking a field goal. Then we were up 17-0. And then from there on, everything pretty much went downhill. You can blame it on St. Jude soon after that on the 3rd and 10 where we thought we got off the field and then he held the face mask. And that's crazy too. Because just to let you know, because I want to go ahead and say this now before we get to the cornerback group later on in the video, like way later. We still have a lot of other position groups to talk about in between. So I just want to make sure I don't forget this. But I just remembered, St. Juice only played 3 snaps in that game. And in one of his 3 snaps, he pretty much shifted the complete momentum of that game. It's 3rd and 10. We're about to get off the field. Punt return team about to come onto the field. We're thinking we're about to have the ball back, and Benjamin St. Juice does that. And that's really the moment that the game went downhill and where the Saints started to mount their comeback and things like that. But I honestly would say that you could even argue that it was slightly before that when Cliff Kingsbury decided to not run the ball with Brian Robinson on 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line. We ended up only kicking a field goal to go up 17-0 rather than 21-0. I completely agree with at Washington today when he said run the ball up the middle with Brian Robinson every single time in those situations. I don't care if they know it's coming. I trust him to get it on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. Even if you don't get it on 3rd and 1, try to get on 4th and 1. Dare a defense to stop Brian Robinson in a short yardage situation twice in a row. I agree. And then also, even beyond that, what I was thinking, I mean, at least give B-Rob the ball there on 3rd and goal from the 1 to at least, like, as a thank you for getting us down the field. Brian Robinson was a lot of the yards that we gained to even get to that point of 3rd and goal. He, like, had a nice run a couple of plays before that to get us to, like, 2nd and short or something like, or even the play before we got to 3rd and 1. And I just hated the fact that even just loyalty-wise, Cliff Kingsbury, Brian Robinson put in all of that work to get us down the field. Why not reward him by giving him the ball right there on 3rd and 1 to give him a touchdown. I just felt like Brian Robinson was the majority of our offense. Why stop now? Why fix was not broken? You know what I'm saying? At least as like a salute for like, thank you for getting us down the field type of thing, something. And then also, Cliff Kingsbury, when we get to real football, like playoff football, stop getting cute. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt because maybe you're trying new things and experimenting because you were confident that we would beat the Saints anyway, but you can't do that after this Saints game that we just had yesterday, especially not when we get to the playoffs. But even as soon as this upcoming game against the Eagles, do not get cute. I hated Cliff Kingsbury's play calling in that Saints game at times. He had moments, though. I'm not going to act like it was just a completely terrible day. He had moments of greatness. He had moments of intelligence where he outsmarted the Saints defensive staff. He had moments, but there were also a lot of moments where I was like, what are you doing? But also at the same time, even with what I felt like was an off day for Cliff Kingsbury overall, the Commanders still rushed for, at a certain point, 2,163 yards as a team. And this was like by like the 3rd quarter. We're not even in the 4th quarter yet. And they officially moved past the 1981 team, who had 2,157 yards for number 10 all-time in franchise history in rushing yards by a burgundy and gold team in a single season. I thought that was pretty cool. And then also, I know I hate timeouts. I really hate timeouts in non-clutch situations where it's like 3rd quarter, early 4th quarter. But man, after we threw that deep shot to Terry McLaurin and it wasn't completed, it was the second failed Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin deep ball attempt. Terry was so tired that he had to go to the sideline. And just to let you know, the reason why we called the timeout, because with Terry McLaurin on the sideline, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler, and Noah Brown all hurt, KJ Osborne a healthy scratch, the players that were on the field for us were Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder, Luke McCaffrey, Ben Sinnott, and Brian Robinson Jr. on a 3rd and 8 that we felt like we had to get. No Terry, no Zach Ertz, no Austin Eckler, no Noah Brown, no KJ Osborne. So I understood that timeout. And then also, before we move on to Jaden Daniels, another thought that I had while watching that game, I was like, yo, how many 1st and 10 runs went for like 2 or 3 yard losses in that game? It felt like it had to be at least like 6 or 7, and then the penalties on top of everything. Now, granted, the refs were hating, but also a lot of those penalties were deserved. Like we deserved to have a lot of those penalties called in our offense, which really set our drives back and prevented us from scoring more points than we should have. Now, moving on to quarterback. Now, overall, Jaden Daniels did not have his best game, most efficient game, like pocket awareness wise or even accuracy wise, but he was still electric and for sure showed you the traits as to why you drafted him 2nd overall. He showed you why he was the 2nd overall pick, and why a lot of people feel like he should have been the number 1 overall pick. He still had a lot of great moments in this game. It wasn't the perfect game. It wasn't the most efficient game. It wasn't very consistent, but boy, you saw those flashes. I mean, that first touchdown to Terry McLaurin was insane in itself. I mean, how about that? It literally looked like Johnny Manziel in his prime at Texas A&M on that play, man. That looked like prime Russell Wilson, prime Lamar Jackson. It was insane. I mean, you could argue that was one of his best plays of the season. I mean, to extend the play and then to have the faith to just give Terry McLaurin a shot. I mean, we've been screaming at quarterbacks at least to just give Terry McLaurin a shot. Now, Taylor Heineke was not a good quarterback, but at the very least, he gave Terry McLaurin a shot. He would just throw it up to him. Like, hey, man, F it. Terry McLaurin down there somewhere, basically throwing it with his eyes closed. Jaden Daniels is doing that, but in a smart way, in an accurate way, in a this is the right time to do it type of way. And I just really appreciate him for that. But again, the magic that he showed to extend the play, to keep his eyes up the field, and then to throw that ball right there where only really Terry McLaurin could get it was amazing. And just to let you know, on that 16-yard touchdown, the time to throw was 8.04 seconds. The target separation was only 0.7 yards. Terry McLaurin was not very open, and the completion probability according to Next Gen Stats was 16.1%. Even crazier, that was the 2nd touchdown this season where Jaden Daniels had a time to throw of over 8 seconds. Just to let you know, that's the most in the NFL, because there have only been 7 such touchdowns this season where the quarterback had 8 seconds of time to throw at least. Jaden Daniels is 2 of the 7. That is absolutely insane, man. So when people talk about, oh, mobility is overrated and things like that, I would definitely say it's not. And then also on that play, Jaden Daniels juked Brian Brzee out of his shoes. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty biased and petty towards Brian Brzee because y'all know I'm heavy into recruiting. I'm a diehard Georgia Bulldogs fan. Brian Brzee was acting like, for like a whole month, that Georgia was his favorite school. He was coming to visit. He was saying all of these nice things. And then suddenly out of nowhere, he just decided to go to Clemson out of nowhere. And it really felt like he played us. So all since high school, college, up to his early NFL career, I'm not saying I'm necessarily rooting against the guy, but I do enjoy the fact that Jaden Daniels juked him out of his cleats more than than a typical other player that it could have happened to, because you should have went to Georgia. You know what I'm saying? Now moving on. Also, that Jaden to Terry connection, man, was elite in the first half. Now, it didn't stay that way throughout the entire game, especially that second half, with some really annoying misses in the second half that could have turned into, it could have really changed the entire game. That game could have been a blowout if we connect on some of those. But that first half was crazy. And we got to remember, this is year one, so the connection will only get better in the future. So, and I respect Cliff Kingsbury, even though he didn't have a good overall day, the fact that he still kept calling for those deep shots and giving Jaden and Terry the opportunities to complete them, I feel like he deserves a salute and respect for that, honestly. But Jaden also had some moments where he was not seeing the field correctly, because like one of the sacks that he took, he was staring Terry McLaurin down the field, and hey, we've been screaming at him, please get Terry the ball more often, look at Terry McLaurin more often. Well, on that play, Jamison Crowder was wide open underneath before Jaden Daniels ended up getting sacked by Chase Young, which is more of a coverage sack. I don't necessarily blame the offensive line that much for that one. Jaden Daniels was holding on to the ball pretty long there, but still, he did not see Jamison Crowder there. So he had moments of holding on to the ball too long. He had a iffy pocket awareness at times. He was a little skittish, taking off running when he didn't necessarily need to. He could have just stepped up in the pocket. Like Spencer Rattler, some of the big plays he had against us in that game, he just simply stepped up in the pocket, let the edge rushers kind of run by him, doing his offensive line a favor, because if he would have stayed back, it would have probably been a sack, or even worse, a strip sack fumble or something like that. But instead, he would just take that 1 or 2 steps up and then deliver the ball right afterwards, allowing the edge rushers to just basically run right by him. Jaden Daniels typically does that really well, and he did that sometimes in the game, but there were times that if he would have just stepped up instead of taking off running, he could have probably had nice completions down the field. Now, of course, play calling was making me mad throughout the game, but even then, Jaden Daniels was still throwing some dots, even on some what seemed to be bad plays. Like he had a big up and down day where like some of the sacks were completely on him, and then he also had a few misses throwing wise in that game. But when he was on, he was on. I mean, dot after dot, especially over the middle. Remember, coming out of the draft, coming out of college, coming out of LSU, a lot of people considered Jaden Daniels' like biggest weakness to be throwing over the middle, where if anything, this game against the Saints and really a lot of the moments he's had throughout this season, his rookie season, throwing over the middle has actually been his bread and butter, and that's been like the most automatic. That's his go-to when in doubt. I know I can make a completion over the middle. I mean, some third down throws to even Jamison Crowder over the middle. Thank goodness we got him back for the first time this season in a long time. I mean, he was throwing dots over the middle. The Zach Ertz one-handed catch, dot over the middle. Some throws to Terry McLaurin, dot over the middle. I mean, that was like his bag. And then later on in the first half, I mean, he had a play where only Jaden Daniels, maybe you can add Lamar Jackson in there, could have converted one of those first downs that he ran for. Did y'all see how Jaden Daniels accelerated on that run where he's running to the right side? And it was really only like a 2-yard gain. It was like 3rd and 1 or something like that, but the acceleration where I think it was like a linebacker or a safety had the angle easily, and Jaden Daniels just outran him to the sideline to be able to pick up the yards that he needed to get it. Man, that was an insane play, and it wasn't even his best run of the day, but I thought it was up to that point. But the second touchdown to Terry McLaurin was insane as well, man. It was 1st and goal. You had Olamide going on his little fake pre-snap little thing, and then you could see the Saints defense move towards him. You see, like in that play, 2 Saints defenders moving towards him. Jaden Daniels went back over all the way to the other side to Terry McLaurin. I mean, beautiful dot. Terry does not have much separation there. That is good coverage from the Saints defender. Jaden Daniels threw it where only Terry McLaurin could get it. That was an absolute dot right there. And up to that point, Jaden Daniels was loving his return to Louisiana. I mean, that's the place where he was balling out for LSU, and it seemed like it was giving him superpowers. And then Soon after that, still first half, he had that insane run for 3 yards. I mean, it was the possession immediately after we scored that second touchdown to Terry McLaurin. The run was ridiculous. You could argue it was his best play all season just simply because of how unique the play was. Like, who else can do that? Maybe Lamar Jackson, just like the other run he had. I mean, that one, it was like immediately after he snapped the ball, there was Saints defenders in his face, and it wasn't even like a screen play. They just beat the guys in front of him. He had to juke one guy out, run past another one, juke another one out. It was insane. It ended up only being like a 3-yard gain, but it was like a ridiculous 3-yard gain, man. That was like the rookie of the year. Go ahead and give him the award right now type of stuff, man. Shaking off tackles. I mean, the strength to shake off the tackle, but then also being so slippery to get by everybody and to avoid everybody. And it was a third down, so we needed him to do that to be able to convert that first down. That was like, we gotta have it, and Jaden Daniels went and got it type of thing. And again, maybe only Lamar Jackson is the only other quarterback in the NFL that could have done that. And then also shouts out to Mason Kinahan, because I agree. He said Jaden Daniels' break sack rating on Madden better be in the 90s if it isn't already. I completely agree. And I mean, that was just one of those plays. It's literally unfair for a defensive coordinator. Like, what play do you call to stop that play? You did everything right as far as like setting up the chessboard and having everybody where they need to be, and you did literally everything right except for bring Jaden Daniels down to the ground. But while he was having amazing plays, he was also holding on to the ball too long throughout that game. And he took some unnecessary sacks as a result as well. And we're going to talk about the offensive line later, of course, as we go through every position group. But some of Jaden's credited sacks were him running out of bounds and running out of the pocket and then going out of bounds right behind the line of scrimmage. Now, some of those were because Jaden was forced to run by the offensive line not blocking. But even on top of that, Jaden was at fault of some of the sacks that he took against the Saints. So yeah, the offensive line was not great, but it wasn't as bad as a lot of people think when they see that they allowed 9 sacks on Jaden Daniels. But ultimately, it was really a Michael Dieter problem above all else, but we'll get there later as well. But of course, again, like I said, Jaden Daniels was also holding on to the ball too long and also getting skittish in the pocket and running when he shouldn't have run sometimes. But at halftime, Jaden Daniels with a 14-0 lead was 17-19 with an 89.5 completion percentage, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns, 132.5 passer rating, plus 6 carries for 20 yards. But at the same time, he had taken 5 sacks up to that point. And just to let you know, in the past 2 games, first halves alone, 29 of 32, 277 yards, 5 total touchdowns, and 0 interceptions between the Saints first half and the Titans first half 2 weeks ago before the bye. Also, shouts out to JP Finley, because after we came back from halftime, Jaden had a couple of runs where he was kind of falling forward, and a lot of people were questioning that. JP Finley pointed out the fact that Jaden going down like that is actually more effective than sliding, and they literally coach that shoulder roll. So please do not constantly keep yelling at him to please slide. That way, because he's shown you that he can slide, but with that, he gains a couple of more yards leaning forward, and he's doing it in a way that's smart to where he's avoiding taking hits. He's doing it early enough. I'm not mad at it. And then he had another big throw to Terry McLaurin early in the third quarter. The chemistry was literally elite up to that point. And then it kind of fell off immediately after that one, but that was still a great throw. It wasn't just the first half only. In the third quarter, early in the third quarter, he had that really good throw to Terry McLaurin. And then he had the insane run on 3rd and 14 to run past so many Saints defenders, several of them, for 24 yards to keep that drive alive. That was insane. And then that's when the misses started. The first one was just like a couple of inches away from being completed, so that one was really annoying. And then I'm also wondering why on one of those misses where like he zipped it down the field rather than doing his like typical rainbow that he typically does on deep shots. I think it's completed if he throws it like on a rainbow, like in a bucket. Maybe he thought that he was getting the ball out late and he felt like he had to rush the ball down there or something. That's why he probably zipped it. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But I feel like if he would have done his typical rainbow, that it would have been a complete, one of those misses to Terry McLaurin deep down the field that should have been a touchdown and would have completely put this game out of reach for the Saints. I feel like if he just would have done a rainbow, it would have been completed. And then after the slight overthrow by Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin, one of them, then he turned into Sam Howell and completely ran ran into his 8th sack of the game, and that was probably his worst play of the game. He literally ran into the sack. I mean, you got to realize that I was screaming this during the live stream of the game where I do my play-by-play analysis. Shouts out to all y'all that pulled up for that. But he has to recognize that they're staying disciplined on him. Like, they're playing against him differently than they would most quarterbacks because they're expecting him to run. Like, they were literally attacking the edge like you typically do, like getting upfield, and at a certain point, they're starting to come back inside because they know Jaden Daniels is aware that they're running past them, so he's trying to fit up in between the guard and the tackle. The tackle's all the way out here, the guard's over there. Jaden Daniels trying to take off in between. The edge rushers know that, so they're literally running up the field like typical standard pass rush snap, and then at a certain point they kind of come back inside to close that window that Jaden Daniels is trying to run into. And you can just tell that they adapted towards that. They watched their tape and really made sure that they could stop that. And he just never really he never really adjusted to that, what I noticed in that game. But hopefully he adjusts to that moving forward, because at that point the counter to that is just stay in the pocket and deliver throws. You can just do that. And then another slight overthrow to Terry McLaurin deep. That should have been a touchdown, but that one I kind of question, did Terry slow down or something like that? But either way, even with his flaws, Jaden Daniels still finished the game with some very impressive stats. First of all, rookie quarterbacks with 3,000 plus passing yards and 500 plus rushing yards in NFL history. Cam Newton in 2011, you know what I'm saying? That's an Atlanta great, Westlake High School, you know what I'm saying? Then you have Robert Griffin III in 2012. You have Kyler Murray in 2019, and now you have Jaden Daniels in 2024. That is rookie quarterbacks in NFL history. We still have a few games to go as well. 3 more games. Also, Jaden Daniels is the first rookie quarterback and 5th player in NFL history to achieve a 80% or higher completion percentage in 4 regular season games. Insane stuff. The only rookie quarterback in NFL history to do that. That has absolutely nothing to do with his legs. That's decision making, arm, accuracy, all of the Tom Brady stuff. So that's insane in itself. Also, Jaden finished the game with a Pro Football Focus grade of 82.6, which was the highest graded player on offense according to my boy Oblon. But when I do my stats video, I'm gonna go look at the Pro Football Focus grades myself. Also, updated NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year odds. You know, well, we don't really care about Defensive Rookie of the Year right now, but Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jaden Daniels is minus 1,100. My fault, minus 1,100. Bo Nix is second at plus 900, and then of course my Georgia dog Brock Bowers is third with 13-1. Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix have kind of separated themselves. Jaden Daniels has a way bigger gap between him and Bo Nix because that boy Bo Picks out there threw I think like 3 or 4 interceptions just yesterday. So Jaden Daniels has that on lock. He been had it on lock in my opinion, but now it's officially on lock after Jaden Daniels has those impressive plays, not only with his arm, but with his legs as well. And then Bo Nix goes out there and is somehow winning games while throwing 3 interceptions. His defense is elite. I don't want to hear any conversations about Bo Picks anymore, especially Rookie of the Year wise this season. And then also, I have a lot more stats on the way. So just be on the lookout again for the Commanders Kings channel. Go make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified immediately when I do release that video. I'm going to do a video just purely all amazing and ridiculous stats that came from that Saints game. I mean, a lot of interesting stuff. So stay tuned for that. Now moving on to the running back room. Let's get it. So Brian Robinson, I felt like overall had a pretty good game. I mean, I just felt like they did everything they could to stack the box and stop him. It seemed like some of the plays that he ran the ball, the Saints just knew he would run the ball before we even snapped the ball, and it was just not much Brian Robinson can do. Also, you could kind of notice in that game that Brian Robinson, whether it be a Cliff Kingsbury play call or it was Brian Robinson seeing that the middle was clogged up, so he would take it outside himself. But either way, we were running the ball to the outsides a lot more than we typically do, especially with Brian Robinson, and that's because Michael Dieter was getting whooped up the middle, so we kind of had to do what we had to do. But man, hey, don't forget, Brian Robinson had a Derrick Henry level stiff arm at a certain point in that game, man. And then also, he contributed heavily in the passing game, and I just felt like he had a pretty decent game on the ground, but I felt like he had a pretty good game through the air, a better game through the air than even on the ground. But again, I blame that more so on the Saints doing everything they could to stop him, and also Michael Dieter and that offensive line just didn't do a great job of blocking for him. Then receiver-wise, I mean, Terry McLaurin had a great game. First of all, he played on the right side sometimes in that game. He was on the left side as well, but he's starting to, Cliff Kingsbury is starting to move more to the right side. We have now seen that for a couple of games in a row, so maybe that's just a permanent thing. Maybe that's how Cliff Kingsbury will adjust the defenses countering him. That's his counter punch back to their counter. Move Terry McLaurin along the line of scrimmage on different sides of the field and things like that, and it's working. And again, Terry McLaurin had a fantastic game. Dyami Brown had some high moments though too, and his great catch, it sucks that ended up getting wiped away because that was a great catch, but then ended up being like a Nick Allegretti holding penalty or something like that. That really sucked, and that's what prevented us from scoring points right before the Saints had the ball at the end to potentially end up beating us for the game. Without that Nick Allegretti holding penalty and Dyami Brown catches that ball, at the very least we get a field goal, and literally the game is done. It doesn't matter what our defense necessarily does. Now, shouts out to Terry McLaurin because I don't think people understand how much he's balling out today. First of all, he's the happiest man in the NFL, I would say. I don't think too many people are happier than Terry compared to what he's had to deal with so far since coming into the NFL, compared to what he has now. Go from the old quarterbacks to the quarterback that he currently has, man. Nobody else is happier than Terry right now. Because, I mean, I have several stats for that. And again, I'm going to have way more stats for y'all in my stats video. I'm going to give y'all a preview right now. But first stat is that Terry McLaurin has double-digit touchdowns in a season for the first time in his NFL career. That is absolutely insane. That is absolutely shameful. Shame on every other quarterback that has even led to this point, to where, I mean, we get Jaden Daniels for 1 year, and Terry McLaurin suddenly is able to hit double-digit touchdowns for the first time in his career. Also, Jaden Daniels is the first player with 10 touchdown receptions since Jordan Reed caught 11 in 2015. And then, of course, Jaden Daniels also ended up with 2 touchdowns in that game against the Saints, all in the first half. Also, Terry McLaurin has officially surpassed 900 receiving yards for the 6th straight season. McLaurin has recorded at least 900 receiving yards and 50 receptions in 6 seasons and is one of 4 receivers now joining Mike Evans, Georgia Dog, AJ Green, and Randy Moss, the only wide receivers in NFL history to ever accomplish that. That is insane. Also, shouts out to Jamison Crowder too, because he was really clutch for us in moments in that game. Not only just as a punt returner, but also as a receiver as well. He made some big clutch catches on 3rd down. But going back to Terry McLaurin with his 2nd touchdown of the day, that was his 4th multi-touchdown game of the season and the 6th of his career. It is the first time in his career that he's done so in consecutive games as well. That is terrible. It took till Jaden Daniels to get here late into the season for Terry McLaurin to finally have his first multi-touchdown game back to back. That is absolutely insane. And again, he's already had 4 this season, and that makes 6 of his career. So only had 2 before this season even happened. He's had 4 this season. That is absolutely insane and ridiculous. Also, even on top of that, Jamar Chase is the only wide receiver in the NFL with more touchdowns than Terry McLaurin right now. Jamar Chase is 15. Terry McLaurin has 11. You can make a fair argument that Terry McLaurin is an all-pro wide receiver this season. We'll get there, though. We'll get there later in my stats video. Also, Terry McLaurin's 4 multi-touchdown games are the 2nd most in the NFL this season, only trailing Jamar Chase, who has 5. Also, Terry McLaurin has recorded his 36th career touchdown reception and has moved into tie Ricky Sanders' 36 for number 8 all-time in franchise history for career touchdown receptions for the Burgundy and Gold. Also, shouts out to this reporter. His name is Mitch Golditch, I believe. He said it's a shame that Terry McLaurin only had 919 yards in his rookie season, because it feels like he's going to pick up the torch from Mike Evans as a guy who was never considered a top 3 receiver in the league. But then you look up and he hits 1,000 yards 10 straight seasons and made 5 Pro Bowls. I completely agree there. Terry McLaurin will now take the mantle basically as the NFL's most underrated receiver from Mike Evans when eventually Mike Evans stops playing and Terry McLaurin keeps going with Jaden Daniels as his quarterback. Also, at halftime, Terry McLaurin had 6 receptions, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 22.8 PPR points already just in the first half, man. But then we had those deep misses and stuff like that, and that really, really hurt us, man. Again, I feel like you could blame Jaden Daniels for some of them, but even one of them, it looked like Terry McLaurin kind of slowed down and did a stutter step or something like that. And then tight end wise, John Bates blocked like, I mean, he was blocking his tail off, but especially on one of those Brian Robinson runs in the first quarter. I mean, if you just look at John Bates, it was insane what he did. And then, of course, to finish up the tight end group, I mean, that one-handed catch from Zach Ertz was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, just insane stuff right there. Absolutely insane. And then now let's talk about the offensive line. Well, first of all, Chase Young whooped up on Brandon Coleman quite a bit in that first half, man. Whooped up on him. Even on plays that he didn't get the sack, he had a pressure and forced Jaden Daniels to run away and then run into another guy to get the sack. Like one of Cameron Jordan's sacks was because Jaden Daniels was running away from Chase Young. And then also the snaps were pretty bad early on in the game from Michael Dieter having to step in for Tyler Biadasz, and that was kind of what gave us the clues that, oh yeah, buckle up, this is about to be a long game for Michael Dieter in this offensive line, and Jaden Daniels is going to pay for it. I mean, the offensive line did not look the same without Tyler Biadasz at all, man. And then we had the drive where Jaden Daniels was balling, but then Brandon Coleman had back-to-back bad plays where it was like a false start one play, and then it allowed Chase Young to get his second sack of the game the very next play. But outside of that, it was really the Michael Dieter problem that was holding the offense back. But even just going back real quick to Chase Young, shouts out to Seawall Sports. She pointed out the fact that Chase Young was playing like he has something to prove. You can really see it, man. Chase Young with Washington had one 2+ sack game. Against Washington, already had a 2+ sack game. So all of those games he played for us, but the one game that he played against, I think only like this is like his second game playing against us, maybe third, he's already achieved the same level of greatness, and that is absolutely insane. Also, John Ridgeway was another guy that was motivated. He was taunting our sideline. Even after the game, he posted something about like revenge and things like that. He really took it personal that we traded him away. I didn't expect him to take it that personally. But now going back to the offensive line, now Andrew Wiley did have a couple of bad plays. Like him and Samuel Cosme did not handle stunts well in that game, but not enough to where we're going to start the Cornelius Lucas conversation back up. Ultimately, Brandon Coleman let Chase Young beat up on him more than I would have liked, but most importantly, Michael Dieter was our worst offensive lineman in that game, and he was the reason our offense stalled so much. Now, granted, Jaden Daniels didn't have a great game either. Well, he didn't have a perfect game. He still had a great game overall, I would say, with just the flashes alone, but it wasn't a very consistent game. Michael Dieter was the most to blame, in my opinion. I mean, we really missed Tyler Biadasz in that game. That game should have shown you everything you needed to see and to know how Tyler Biadasz is having a Pro Bowl season right now. I mean, as soon as we don't have him, the offensive line looks terrible. I knew the offensive line wouldn't look the same without him, but it was way worse than I thought it would be. Somebody needs to get Tyler Biadasz some soup right now, man. Somebody needs to make sure they nurse him back to health immediately. And I don't know if y'all saw it, but on that play where Jaden Daniels scrambled for like 24 yards after running around and juking out like several Saints players like we talked about earlier, while everybody came to celebrate with Jaden Daniels and congratulate him, like, man, that was ridiculous. Thank goodness. Thank you and stuff like that. And everybody's getting ready for the next play. Jaden took time to yell at Michael Dieter and basically tell him, like, get it together, man. So you could tell that Jaden Daniels, even though he made a great play, was mad about the fact that he even had to do all of that because Michael Dieter got beat badly so quickly. He got beaten badly so quick. It was bad. Like, it was like immediate. Jaden Daniels was running for his life pretty much immediately after he snapped the ball. You could tell that Jaden Daniels was really upset about that situation. Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball. Woo, we had to take a break to eat real quick. But now let's get to the defense, like I said. So first of all, our starting secondary, when we like first went out onto the field. Now, granted, Noah Igbenogany ended up playing a lot of snaps, even more snaps than I believe than Percy Butler. But when we first went out there, it was Marshawn Lattimore and Mike Sanford still opposite each other outside corners, as expected. But then you had Percy Butler out there along with Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin. So we chose to go with 3 safeties rather than 3 corners. Now, we already knew Benjamin St. Juste was going to get benched. He was going to be a part of a very limited rotation. How limited? I mean, we just talked about it earlier, man. 3 snaps, dog. 3 snaps, and then he managed in 3 of those snaps to sell us worse than probably any other defensive player, probably other than Derek Forrest, because Derek Forrest had a pretty bad game as well, especially that last 7 minutes after he knocked out Jeremy Chin. I was to argue that Benjamin St. Juste probably did more damage than Derek Forrest did, even in the final 7 minutes. But either way, that was our starting cornerback group going out there. But of course, eventually Noah Igbenogany hit the field, and then he played a lot. He was out there in coverage quite a bit. He had a couple of good plays, a couple of bad plays. We're going to get there later when we get to the cornerback group. But also, I liked how we came out with energy immediately. I mean, of course, we shut them out They allowed 0 points the first half. But even like the very first play, Dante Fowler and Bobby Wagner already pushing and shoving people on the very first play of the game. Like, they came out with a certain energy, like, yeah, it's about to be a long day. Y'all might as well just go ahead and lay down and let us walk over y'all, because y'all about to be in for a fight. And do y'all really want this back and forth? How y'all? And I mean, at a certain point in the first half, it looked like, okay, maybe the strategy worked, but then the second half, it got a little ugly for us. But either way, though, opening drive, we were able to get a 3-and-out. I mean, I believe they started the game like 0-5 on third downs until they brought Spencer Rattler out there in the second half, and then they finally converted their first third down. But the whole first half, no third downs allowed, most notably to be converted. And it started with that very first one. And shouts out to Deron Payne and Dorrance Armstrong splitting the sack there on the first possession. And then we got a sack. And then on that sack, the Superdome erupted. From everybody that was there at the games, it sounded like it was like a game in Landover. Like, the Burgundy and Gold fan base was very deep out there. And it was just off of the fact that Jake Haener was slipping and falling all over the place, and all we had to do was pretty much touch him once he was on the ground, and they counted the sacks. I already knew this game was going to be wacky from the jump. I mean, Jake Haener was just slipping and falling on cartoon Looney Tunes banana peels all game, and all we had to do was just go touch him, and you were credited with a sack. It was basically a race to see who could touch Jake Haener while he was on the ground first. But Joey Jr., I feel like overall not a bad call game from you, schematically and things like that, but I was confused as to why you had Mykal Walker on Alvin Kamara, which is like one of the very few big plays we gave up that game. We gave up a handful, but the very first one was a Mykal Walker covering Alvin Kamara. They're literally not even just their best offensive player, their only offensive player, with Derek Carr and Taysom Hill, Chris Olave. All of their top receivers were hurt and everything like that. It was just Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Alvin Kamara, and friends. Even though Spencer Rattler actually went out there and looked like a pretty good quarterback against us, against our defense that second half. But either way, how do we allow their very best offensive weapon to be covered by our third linebacker that barely touches the field? And if anything, actually, Mykal Walker probably played a little bit less than Jordan McGee. So really our fourth linebacker. I don't know how we got to that point, but that's what happened. Still need an explanation for that one, Joey Jr. But then again, the Saints probably just did a good job of seeing Mykal Walker on the field, probably designed the play and called the play for Alvin Kamara to run his way and then leave him in the dust for a big gain. But that was like the only real big play we allowed in the entire first half. But ultimately, we ended up getting consistent pressure on Jake Haener, and that forced him into making a bad decision, which he threw an interception directly to Mike Sainristil. And I already knew coming into this game, I told y'all, I've been saying it all for the past over a week, really, since the bye week. Since I wasn't even in Atlanta, I was saying they're not going to target that boy Marshawn Lattimore. Do not target him. Why would you target him? Why would you even try that? And they did it. We're going to talk about that at the cornerback group. But my point is, with them avoiding Marshawn Lattimore, that meant that Mike Sainristil was going to get a lot of targets, because they got to throw the ball somewhere, right? I mean, other than targeting our linebackers like they did with Mykal Walker, if they're going to target a corner, Noah Benogany got a lot of targets, and then Mike Sainristil got a few, and Mike Sainristil made them pay. He should have had 2 interceptions. He dropped the second one, but that first one, he made sure he got that one. And again, first half, no points allowed. Washington has allowed 0 points in the first half 3 times this season. That's the most in a single season for the Burgundy and Gold since 2015. Also on top of that, just Jake Haener's first half stats. Before he got benched coming out to the third quarter, he was 4 of 10 for 49 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, and 3 sacks. And I believe like 2 of those sacks, he slipped and fell himself, and all we had to do was touch him. Also, by the end of the first half, they only allowed 38 total yards and only 9 minutes and 52 seconds of possession. That was incredible, man. And Jake Haener only had a 16.2 quarterback rating at halftime. And again, the only real first down was the play where Sainristil got beat, but then they had 2 receivers false start before the play, so really it shouldn't have even been called. But that was the only first down conversion of the first half, of a third down conversion, I believe, of the first half, I think, or maybe the only first down total. I can't remember, but either way, their offense was anemic other than Mike Sainristil getting beat on a route. And then also by halftime, Johnny Newton and Mike Sainristil were our highest graded defensive players according to Pro Football Focus's live grading system. Then coming into the third quarter, they benched Jake Haener, for Spencer Rattler, and that was the smartest thing the Saints did that entire game, man. Because to start that third quarter, man, he came in and balled out immediately the first possession, and he had a pretty good game the entire second half. I mean, third down conversions, big throws. Then you had Cedric Wilson throw a touchdown that was caught one-handed by Alvin Kamara, and I was screaming during the live stream, man, hey, from one Atlanta guy to another Alvin Kamara, not today, man. Just do me this favor, bro. Like, I'm with you. Every time the Saints play them sorry little Falcons, I'm rooting for y'all. You know what I'm saying? And I just feel like I've put in enough good favor to where you could do the Commanders a favor by not going crazy against us. And boy, he went out there and had a pretty good game up to the point that he got hurt, and that one-handed touchdown that he caught from a wide receiver was insane. But then we sacked Rattler on 3rd and 10, but guess what? The infamous play where Benjamin St-Juste was called for illegal hands to the face. I don't know if y'all looked at the replay, but that play was insane. All he literally had to do was keep his hands down and it wouldn't have happened. He like accidentally grabbed onto his face because for some reason he's playing man coverage like this. He's playing man coverage like a goalie. I don't know what's going on here. Playing man coverage like a shooting guard. Like I have absolutely no idea why he was doing that. But I mean, first of all, I was mad at Joe Witt Jr. I was like, you know what Benjamin St-Juste does. No matter how little he plays, he's gonna find a way to sell your defense, right? And my whole thing was, why is he on the field at all? I mean, like, it's at a certain point, you're like, man, this guy's almost unplayable because only in 3 snaps he managed to have the worst Commanders play of the day. I just don't get it. But at the same time, you can't necessarily blame Joe Witt Jr. because he limited this guy from being your starting corner, technically your cornerback 1 to start the season, to now your 4th corner, only playing 3 snaps in the game. I mean, he's trying to limit him. Maybe everybody else just needed a breather at the time, and that was like, he probably sent St-Juste out there feeling like he would probably mess it up. Like his heart probably was in his stomach before the ball was even snapped. Like, please St-Juste, please don't make me look crazy. And then St-Juste went out there and made him look crazy again. 3 snaps and managed to just throw away a drive and completely change the entire trajectory of that game. Because up to that point, even though Spencer Rattler had a good first drive, after that they kind of stalled out. It was what, like 17-7, 20-7, something like that, and they just couldn't get anything going outside of that first touchdown drive they had. We had them at 3rd and 10. Benjamin St-Juste came in and gave them that penalty. They ended up scoring. I mean, ridiculous. And then the refs came in and started hating on our defense. So I can blame them for a few things. Like the defensively, we should have just been better. Top to bottom, defensive line, linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, all of that. But the refs started hated, especially on Dante Fowler. They called some phantom roughing the passer penalties on him. The first one was pretty bad. The second one, I would argue, was even worse. But the first one was hilarious because the very next play, he exploded onto the backfield for a big loss of 6 on a run play. So I love it when players get mad. The refs cheat you, you get mad, and then you make a big play out of it. I wish people just play with that same level of anger every single snap. Why does it take the refs to have to do that? But either way, I'm happy that he responded that way. Also, then we had a possession where Johnny Newton batted the ball down at the line of scrimmage. Then Deron Payne did it again the next play, and I mean, they ended up scoring 3 points after that St-Juste penalty. It was actually not a touchdown. They ended up scoring 3 points later. And I also blame the refs for those roughing the passing penalties. But hey, man, shouts out to Dante Fowler for recovering after a phantom call. And then the next 2 plays, you had batted down passes from the D-line, and we were able to escape that. Bend but don't break, only allowing 3 points, even after Benjamin St-Juste tried to give the Saints as many points as possible. Also, shouts out to Mason Kinahan for pointing this out. Points allowed for the Commanders defense over the past 3 games. First half 9, second half 54. We are not a second half team, offensively nor defensively. Something about the second halves, we are just bad. We get off the hot starts, first and second quarter, third and fourth quarter, it gets ugly. And then again, we had another terrible roughing the passer call, and that moved the Saints all the way up the field, man. I mean, we had them pinned back, and now granted, they ended up completing the pass. It would have been a first down anyway, but then that additional 15 yards, and then they just kept going and going and going. It was so annoying, man. And then also, I mean, of course, before we move on to the defensive line, my biggest question, it's not even a question to the Commanders, Saints, why was Spencer Rattler not starting even sooner? I just don't get it. He should have at least started in the first quarter of this game, let alone we could probably even talk about other games that he probably should have started, because he looked like their best quarterback. God, he even looked like he was slightly better than Derek Carr that second half of the game. Lord have mercy. Now moving on to the defensive line, after Deron Payne just simply put a hand on Jake Haener, who already fell by himself, he had recorded his 4th sack of the season and the 34th 4th of his career. With that sack, Payne moves into top 10 in Washington history with 1980 since 1982. That's actually really bad. That's not good. We need more sack producers on this team and this franchise. Also, even though that play was blown up by Dante Fowler, congratulations for Payne putting a hand on Jake Haener after he fell. So, I mean, you know, technically it was a Dante Fowler made play, but Deron Payne, hey, shouts out to you for getting the sack. Then Dorrance Armstrong got a sack. It was his first sack since week 5, which is incredible because remember the beginning of the season, before he got hurt against the Ravens, we were thinking like, okay, maybe this Dorrance Armstrong thing has something to it for real. Like, okay, maybe this is a great signing, a very underrated signing that's going to help us long term. But after the Ravens injury, then he came back a few weeks later, and then we just never really saw much of that. But he finally got one against the Saints. Maybe he's heating back up into his first 5-week self. But he ended up having a pretty good game. I think he ended up with like a sack and a half or something like that, 2.5, something like that. He ended up having, because I think he was credited with half a sack at one point as well. So I think he had a pretty good game. Also, just to let you know, Johnny Newton was the Commanders' highest graded defensive player, not in the first half, and I believe he ended up being one of the highest by the end of the game as well. He blew up a couple of run plays. He was batting down passes at the line of scrimmage. I feel like Johnny Newton finally, after we called him out from the last few weeks of what he did against the Titans and the Eagles, the Steelers and Cowboys and things like that, seems like he's finally getting back on track. Linebacker wise, I mean, again, the Mykal Walker situation was just crazy of him covering Alvin Kamara. But other than that, I mean, Bobby Wagner was on everything in the run game, man, especially early on in that first half. I mean, it looked like he literally knew the plays before the Saints even snapped the ball. I mean, he was out there looking like the tackle for loss king in this game, especially in that first half. And then with 2 minutes left in the second quarter, Luvu had an elite pressure on Jake Haener to force a bad throw, which allowed us to get off the field. Also, Jordan McGee was on the field in this game, y'all. I didn't personally notice him, but he was tied for the most tackles at halftime out of our entire team. So that boy Jordan McGee is out there. He's starting to play a little bit more and more. Telling you that 5th round rookie is going to matter. I think we may not necessarily see his impact like in a big way until like next season, but the more meaningful snaps he plays towards the end, as we finish out the season, going to the postseason and things like that, it's going to pay dividends for the future when he's one of your starting linebackers potentially as soon as 2025. Also, Luvu did get beat in coverage by Alvin Kamara, but what are we supposed to do with that? It wasn't as bad as Mykal Walker, but it was still pretty bad. I mean, you got to help with a safety there or something. I love Frankie Luvu, and I still feel like you can argue he's having an all-pro season, but he's not supposed to be able to cover Alvin Kamara. There's not many linebackers in NFL history that could. And then also Frankie Luvu had a dropped interception, man, and that would have been a really nice interception to catch, so I was really disappointed in him for that. And then, especially since they made the 51-yard field goal after you dropped the interception. So you dropping that interception basically allowed the Saints to score 3 more points that they should not have scored. But overall, Frankie Luvu and Bobby Wagner, good games. Not the most impactful games y'all have had this season, but still pretty good. Bobby Wagner, I feel like it was great against the run. Frankie Luvu and those guys were doing a pretty good job of getting some pressure, but I wouldn't say those were the best games of Luvu or Wagner. Now moving on to the cornerback position. I literally went into the game like, I'm going to try to watch Marshawn Lattimore, number 23, as much as possible. But of course, with the view that we get from watching the game live, that's really hard to do. But I went into this game knowing, pay attention to Marshawn Lattimore. But then Mike Sanford still stole the show by getting that early interception on Jake Haener. And that was a big one because that was like probably one of the very few drives that Jake Haener had that was like fairly successful. Like, they were moving the ball that drive a little bit. It looked a little scary, but shouts out to Mike Sanford still for getting that interception. Just to let you know, that was his second interception of the season. And then I thought it was funny because you got to avoid Marshawn Lattimore, right? Which means naturally Mike Sanford still is just going to clean up and get some interceptions because they're going to keep trying them, and maybe teams will eventually learn to not try them. But right now they're going to keep trying the young rookie, and Marshawn Lattimore is just going to be completely avoided, at least by the Saints. We'll see what happens against the Eagles and Falcons and the Cowboys and whoever we end up playing in the first round of the playoffs. But right now, Marshawn Lattimore has been completely avoided. Also, later on, Mike Sanford still did get cooked on a 3rd and 5, but then immediately after that, the very next play, he had really good coverage and made up for it. So I love that mentality from Mike Sanford still right there. Just like quarterbacks, you kind of want to see them struggle just a little bit to see how they bounce back. Mike Sanford still is one of those guys with a short-term memory, bounces right back as if he didn't have the bad play before that. And then elite coverage on the island on 3rd and 10 with almost another pick, the final defensive drive drive before going into the halftime. I mean, that was crazy. I mean, great instinct, sticky coverage, made a play on the ball. He did literally everything right, but successfully come down with the ball and catch it. Everything else was beautiful, though. And then also at that point, I had just noticed, where's Marshawn Lattimore? Is he even in the game? Is his name even being said? And that is the point. That's what you want. That's why you traded for him, and that's why you're paying him the money that you're paying him right now, for that exact reason. You're supposed to forget that a corner is even on the field. Unless they're getting an interception, you don't want to remember they're even on the team. That's exactly how it's supposed to go. And shouts out to Mike Sanford still for accepting that responsibility, accepting that duty. With Marshawn Lattimore not being targeted, guess who will be? You. And he stepped up and had a really good game. And just to let you know, Marshawn Lattimore in the first half, 14 coverage snaps, 0 catches, 0 yards, because of course, you know why? 0 targets. Literally why you traded for him. Literally. And he literally just took away his side of the field this entire game, bro. I mean, the entire game. Just to let you know, he finished the game with 0 targets. That's why you may not have noticed him. And that's why when some people were predicting he was going to get an interception, I was like, I don't think so. I just don't see how it happens, because you're gonna have to you're gonna have to throw it to him, and people are afraid of throwing it to Marshawn Lattimore. It may be a mix of afraid of Marshawn Lattimore, and also, you know, you're not necessarily afraid of Mike Sanford still yet, because he's still a rookie. You feel like you can maybe probably get away with it over there, so it's probably a mix of both. But either way, man, I mean, Lattimore's name was never mentioned other than the commentators just talking about the fact that we traded for him. Again, that's literally why you traded for him. He takes away half of the field. He takes away the opponent's team's best wide receiver. When Marshawn Lattimore is lined up against a receiver, the quarterback's not even considering throwing it his way. And guess what? Dan Quinn rewarded him with the game ball. I love that. I absolutely love the fact that Dan Quinn gave him the game ball, even though that you could argue, you know what I'm saying, maybe another player deserved it more because they were more impactful statistically. But as far as game-wise, X's and O's, chess pieces on the board, you can argue Marshawn Lattimore was the most impactful player on that team, on offense, defense, whatever, just off of the fact that he literally forced the Saints to only play half of the field. And then safety wise, I did notice that Jeremy Chin was blitzing a lot in that game and even got himself a sack at one point. You know why? That's the Marshawn Lattimore effect. He's taking away a whole half of the field, so now instead of having to keep back 2 safeties, Quan Martin is the only safety that needs to consistently be down there as the free safety all the way back. And then now Jeremy Chin can be in the box more often, where he's better at anyway. So that is the Marshawn Lattimore effect as well. But I hated how that one play, Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin played that ball on that deep pass from Rattler to Marquez Valdez-Scantling, because that should have been an interception, especially Jeremy Chin. Like, Jeremy Chin went up to break the pass instead of just going for the interception. If he would have went for the interception, he probably could have easily have had it. And then the Saints ended up scoring a touchdown on the very next play. So I kind of blame Jeremy Chin mostly, but also a mix of Quan Martin there as well, where if he was a little bit rangier, maybe he would have had the interception. So I blame them for that touchdown that happened on that drive. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, Derek Forrest not only knocked out Jeremy Chin from the game, but then he proceeded to, after taking his place, after knocking him out, get torched the entire fourth quarter, especially those last 7 minutes, including the touchdown to almost win the game for the Saints. If they would have ended up converting that 2-point conversion, Derek Forrest would have allowed the game-losing touchdown. But even before they got to that play, the plays before that, Derek Forrest was getting beat a lot. And I like Derek Forrest. I like his talent. I'm just going to blame it on the fact that he was still a little rusty. He's not used to playing meaningful snaps in the game this year. The only time he's played is special teams, if that. Sometimes he's even been healthy scratches for a lot of games this year. So maybe just throwing him out there to the Wolves wasn't the best decision. But they made a concerted effort to play him, because I mean he had to be playing and be on the field to injure Jeremy Chin, right? So they decided that they were going to play him more this game than they typically have this season. And I guess he just wasn't ready. Maybe he'll be ready later. Again, I don't want to say that he's a bad player or anything like that. I like Derek Forrest's talent. I feel like that athleticism has to be useful in some way, shape, or form. We seen him play at a pretty high level a couple of years ago as a starting safety for us. I believe it's there, but it just wasn't there against the Saints. So don't get me wrong. Don't think I'm a Derek Forrest hater. I still like him a lot, but he just was not good against the Saints. I got to call it how I see it. But future-wise, I think he still has some talent to him. And then, of course, moving on to special teams. First of all, Luke McCaffrey was a pretty good returner for us. I mean, he has some really good returns. I mean, shouts out to Luke McCaffrey. There you go. Jamison Crowder took over punt returns, looked better than Olamide Zaccheaus, and then Luke McCaffrey took over kick returns, and he wasn't Austin Eckler, but he was probably the next best thing compared to anything else that we have on the roster right now with Austin Eckler hurt for probably the rest of the season. We'll see. And then the kicker that we had to sign. Just so that you know, Greg Joseph is the 7th kicker we've had on this team since March. 7th. He's the backup to 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 the backup. Golly. So, at least on the opening drive, he made his 45-yarder, but then ended up not counting. So we ended up scoring a touchdown anyway. So I'm going to give him credit for that 45-yarder, even though it ended up not counting. And then, thank goodness, he was able to hit all of his PATs. And then he started to show you why he was even available off the streets, off the couch. But then he made his second attempt at the beginning of the fourth quarter. We'll take that, but this is not your long-term answer to kicking. And I still don't even understand why Dan Quinn even attempted a 54-yard field goal with this guy instead of just punting the ball, potentially setting us up to lose that game against the Saints. Just punt the ball, pin them within the 5-yard line. Tress Way is a dog at punter. We could have easily just, I understand trying to go for the win right there, but I would agree with that decision if we had at least Austin Seibert or maybe even Zane Gonzalez, but not Greg Joseph. I completely disagree with the call, more so because of the kicker that we had than the strategy itself. That just wasn't the kicker to do that with, man. Just wasn't. And I just got a notification that Kirk Cousins was picked to open the second half. That just brought a smile to my face. It warms my heart. I hate them sorry little Falcons, man, but keeping it pushing after going off topic. Again, I would have just went ahead and punted. I would have just go ahead and pinned them deep and then forced them to drive the entire field to tie that game up or even go for a 2-point conversion. I mean, you saw that they started with they only had one timeout as well. Let's not forget that. And they started with the ball at like their own, like, with 40-something yard line after we attempted the 54-yarder. It was like a late, like a high 30, early 40-yard line starting position. And we could have started them into the within the 5-yard line. Just imagine how much time that would have wasted for them to get up there. I mean, they had to score the potentially game-winning touchdown with basically 0 seconds left on the clock. And the refs, we already talked about it earlier, had to give them an additional illegal 4 seconds. If we would have just pinned them within the 5, we would have never have had any of these discussions. Potentially, though. I mean, of course, you know, hindsight's 2020, butterfly effect. Maybe if we pin it inside their 5, maybe they take more deep shots and move down the field anyway. But either way, I hated the decision. Again, Luke McCaffrey, though, looked good in kick returns. Jamison Crowder looked good in punt returns. I'm happy about that. Now, before we go, I want to give y'all some other people's words and opinions and reviews of what happened in that game, because I feel like a lot of people have some really interesting insight, and I always want to share that insight with y'all once I see it. And I just also, of course, want to make sure I definitely give those guys credit for the insight. They bring up a lot of interesting quotes, man. They bring up a lot of interesting points. Let's get to it. So first of all, John Comm just straight up tweeted, "What a ... weird game, but a win is a win." But man, and I felt that completely, man. A win is a win. I'm happy. You know, we're 9-5. It is what it is. But at the same time, man, ugh. But, I mean, the Chiefs been winning like that all season. So, I'm not about to sit here and discredit our win over the Saints when the Chiefs have been winning like that all season. And remember, the Saints just recently beat the Panthers, and the Panthers took the Eagles to the wire just last week. So, I'm not about to sit here and discredit the Saints or discredit our win. A win is a win, but man, you would just love to win better than that. Also, for the first time since 2016, Washington will have a winning record on the season. 9 wins, and we still have 3 more games to go. That's crazy, though. It's been since 2016 we've had a winning record. Also, shouts out to Rick Doc Walker, because he said we have to develop killer instinct. A better opponent will make you pay. I completely agree there. If you play the way you played against the Saints, against the Eagles, even the Falcons, and I mean, we already lost to the Cowboys, so you know you can't do it against them. We would literally finish the season 0-3 if we play like that, so we can't have that. Also, shouts out to All Galdi. Ugliest win of the season by far, but still a win. I agree. Washington, in year 1 of a rebuild recalibration, has clinched the franchise's first winning record since 2016 and the first 9-win regular season since 2015. We will definitely take it. Also, shouts out to my boy Commander's Realm, Eric Sully, for his thoughts. You know he always gives a few points. Let's go through every single one of them, see which ones I agree with. Maybe I'll agree with all of them. He said, talk about a tale of 2 halves. First half, they played the way they should, shut the Saints offense and bad quarterback down. Offense defense was efficient enough. Second half was sloppy, and they had no answer for Rattler. Then next point, Jaden had a mixed day. His completion percentage was impressive, but 8 sacks, not all on him. Kinda need to eliminate that. And he made plays when it mattered, but a lot was left on the field. I agree, it was an up and down day. It wasn't a great game, but it's also not the bad game that some people were trying to tell you that it was. Also, they clearly were committed to making Terry the focal point. He had another 2 touchdown day, but it should have been 3 or 4 and a $150 receiving some big misses by Jaden. I agree, but shouts out to Cliff Kingsbury for making a concerted effort to make sure Terry McLaurin is involved. Also, Crowder made some big catches. He's going to be important going forward. I agree. Defense was up and down. They dominated Hainer, but once Rattler came in, things completely changed. I completely agree. I thought the edge rushers, Fowler and Armstrong, had a noticeably good day. Both were quick off the edge and constantly in the backfield. I agree. Mike Sanford still continues to be a phenomenal pick. Agreed. Lattimore's name wasn't called even once, which is great. Somehow St. Juice, who played like 1 snap, managed to get his name mentioned. Literally 3 snaps, and his name was mentioned more than Marshawn Lattimore. Insane. And again, in my stats video that I'm gonna do for the Commanders King soon, probably tomorrow, maybe the day after that, I'm gonna tell you like the exact snap counts for every corner. It's insane, bro. Marshawn Lattimore played like all but 3 snaps. And then Benjamin St. Juice only played 3 snaps, and somehow he had a bigger negative impact on the game than Marshawn Lattimore. We heard his name more called more than anything than him. Also, they struggled to run. B-Rob really never got going. The center situation probably contributed to that. I agree. I thought the officials had a rough day, especially with clock management. Definitely. The kicker situation is going to bite them in a big spot here soon, and it almost did today. Unfortunately, I don't see a solution. It's scary. Hopefully Zane Gonzalez comes back healthy, but even then, I mean, I don't see him being our long-term answer at kicker moving forward in 2025. Also, a couple of injuries with Ertz and Chin. That will be stories this week. Hope they're good. We need them to be good. And then 9-5, things are better than ever, but they tried to ruin us today. Can't screw around like that against Philly next week. I completely agree with every single one of those points. Also, shouts out to Tay and Todd Podcast. He just simple points. Jaden and Terry missed 3 times. Allegretti holding penalty. Luvu dropped interception and a missed 54-yard field goal. So many missed opportunities. Just one of these plays likely ends the game. That's a great point. Literally, out of those 4 things I just told you, if just one of them doesn't happen, we just go ahead and win that game without any heart attack at the end. Also, shouts out to George Carmi. Giving up 8 sacks was the most disappointing part for me, but at least we won. I believe we ended up giving up 9. Maybe we only gave up 8, but either way, there's no such thing as only 8. Also, Commander's Realm just straight up said thanks for the heart attack. That was it. Also, I want to point out the fact that, again, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs have been playing close games like that all year, where a lot of luck was required to win some of those games for them. A lot of those games for them. And Eagles just barely escaped the Panthers. It's the NFL. And if you would have told me they would be 9-5 back in August, I would be super excited. So again, we need to walk away from this win happy and excited. Plus, we're still the 7th seed. If the Seahawks would have beat the Green Bay Packers, we actually would have been a 6th seed, but the Seahawks just couldn't get the job done. Most notably, Geno Smith when he was playing, and then Sam Howell when he came in, just throwing interceptions immediately into I don't even know why he threw that one. But I mean, I just didn't expect the Seahawks to beat the Packers anyway, but it was a man can dream. But it's still at the same time with the 7th seed, we still have an 82% chance of making the playoffs, because right now we are a game ahead of the Seahawks, 2 games ahead of the Cardinals. We'll see what happens with the Falcons, and then you have the 49ers, Cowboys, Saints, all of those guys down there, because now the Rams are the 4th seed. They're the winners of the NFC North as of right now. We'll see what happens with the rest of the season, because I guess they have the tiebreaker between them and the Seahawks. So again, with a 7th seed and we have an 82% chance of making the playoffs, we should be happy about that. Then shouts out to Scott Abraham. He said, Commanders fans, I know it feels like a loss, but the reality is it's a big win, a huge step closer for Washington to make the playoffs. Bring on Philly next week at Northwest Stadium. I agree. And then also shouts out to Commander Sean at DMV Commanders. Great point. Great job just taking a step back and looking at everything from a macro point of view. He said Josh Harris took over in 23, fired Rivera, hired Peters in January 15th, hired Quinn February 1st, overturned 70% of the roster, star rookie quarterback, star corner, Terry all-pro season, 9-5 record going into week 16, guaranteed winning season after being 4-13 the previous one. Thank you for that outlook. That's exactly how I feel, and I agree. Now, moving on, I have a few random other things I want to update y'all on before we go. Just a quick couple of things. First of all, John Com tweeted, was not exactly a raucous locker room afterwards. Somewhat subdued. Got the win, but they know they'll have to finish so much better. And I like that. That's exactly how it should be. I'm happy. Thank goodness they are not feeling great about that win. They should be happy about winning, but they should not feel good about the way that they went. I'm happy that the locker room was kind of like, yeah, we almost messed that one up. Thank you. Also, this is before the Saints game, but this proves my point. If you look on the screen right now, you see us all the way at the bottom right. These are the point differentials by quarters for every NFL team through week 14. First quarter plus 52. Second quarter plus 46, third quarter plus 11, and then the fourth quarter minus 29. We literally get worse as the game proceeds on. Whereas like the Buffalo Bills are the exact opposite. They start well, get better and better every quarter. And then I guess they're the only antithesis to us because everybody else is some other mix of things. The Lions are incredible though. Do y'all see that Lions second quarter at plus 131? That is the highest point differential quarter in the entire NFL. And I guess you could argue that the Steelers are like the third quarter masters with a plus 74. And then again, our first quarter, amazing. Second quarter, great as well. Third quarter, good, all right, I guess. And then the fourth quarter is just where we just mess up a lot. We need to be better there. That's my point. Also, before we move on, I need to go and take, like, maybe I need to go ahead and look this up for the stats video. But how many times have we won the coin toss this year, man? I don't know. This captain, changing up the captains every week strategy that Dan Quinn is doing is at least working for the coin toss. How many times have we won the coin toss this year? I'm pretty sure like 80-90% of games. It's actually incredible. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you feel about everything discussed in the video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. I apologize for this video coming out so late, not even just the night of the game, but the night afterwards. I was busy all day today, but I'm happy that I could finally sit down and do this. And I was so hungry again after I finished the offensive first half of the video. I had to go eat and then come back and finish the defensive second half. So hopefully this video is uploaded before 12 a.m. We'll see. But either way, man, if you made it this far in the video, this long of a video, salute to you, man. You are the GOAT. I wish I could leave y'all likes, man. I really appreciate y'all, everybody. And of course, make sure you leave a like on the way out. And of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Do you agree or disagree with any of my points? Let me know how you felt about the game. Any points that I may have missed, that I overlooked, let me know how you feel in the comment section. Again, I always say this and I really mean it, but just whenever I'm finally not as busy, I want to sit down and read and reply to as many comments as possible. I miss the days where I was able to read and reply to literally every other comment. I mean, literally not even every single comment. But I mean, we've grown and I'm also more busy now, so I really apologize. I really used to pride myself on that, and it really does make me sad that I'm not able to do it anymore, but I'm gonna try to make a concerted effort to get back to that. I also, again, I've been messing up. I haven't been doing the film sessions for the channel members. I'm working on that as well, so channel members are gonna look out for some film sessions soon. I really appreciate y'all. I want to catch y'all later. I'm out.